All right, I'll call to order our SAU meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. It's been a long September. It's been a really long September. It's only September 30th, and it's just been a lot of stuff going on to begin with. And but it's good to be in school. It is really good to be in school. It's good to walk around and see the kids and see them enjoying out in the sports fields, seeing them participating in that, in the classrooms, in the lunchrooms. Reminds me kind of why we do this. We do this for kids, and the live being back in school has been really, really good. So when I walk around and I see the staff, they're tired. The Willette's tragedy in the middle of the month, that was tough. Took a lot out of everybody. We're implementing a reading program that's really stretching and growing some people as we go forward. And kids are starting to misbehave a little bit, which I smile a little bit because it's like, yeah, that's what normal school is about. I don't know if you've seen, there's this TikTok challenge that some kids like to destroy restrooms and some other stuff, and just an uptick in behavior. And talk to my administrators, and you can see them get frustrated, and at the same time, it's good to be back. I mean, it's good to see kids kind of being kids again. So I won't go deeply into my proposals. I sent them out written. My proposal is to stay with the status quo that we have developed, what we passed in the original open plan, and then how it was modified over Labor Day weekend. The only change I would make to that is I think we can talk about in the proposal, I think I said in my written part, is do we want to make it that as students become eligible for vaccine, which would mean age eligible plus the 5 or so weeks that you need to make sure that they can get the vaccine and become or have their immunity grow, do we want to roll that as we go forward? So right now, the middle school is masked, through 8th grade, everyone is masked. And I would say, okay, could we go back and look at it and say, as the classrooms, like if an 8th grade classroom had all fully vaccine eligible students, could they take the mask off during the class? It's easier, I think if I talked to Adam, and he would say, it's easier to just have the whole school masked or not masked as far as implementation goes. It's also a little bit better as far as trying to make sure that we don't have clusters or outbreaks as we move forward. But I think I would be willing to look at that, and especially as the vaccine becomes eligible for younger and younger students, we could get to the point where everyone's vaccine eligible, and you could say we don't have to wear masks. So those are my proposals. Just I had one thing in the back of my mind to make them forward. But those are the proposals that I would go forward. Oh, the one in the back of my mind is we keep the lunch spread out at the middle school. We just talked to the administrators over there. Doesn't seem to be a big thing, and it really works out. So that's the proposals that I'd like to put forward for the board to consider. And again, I'd like to spend a lot of time, I put them on written form. The parents propose.
We opened up the email again this week to take public comments. I think Bryce is going to summarize that for us.
Sure. We received 26 emails since school opened, since August 30th. Last time we had this meeting, August 19th, we received about 110, just to frame of reference. I would say the vast majority of those 26 were also included in the 110, basically many of the same people, with many of the same comments. And again, just like the last time, there's nothing negative, nasty. A number of them were quite supportive of us and what we're doing with the board. My interpretation of most of them were tied to the individual parent or person writing it. If they have a student at BES, most of their comments were tied to BES. In my experience, I know Eric disagrees with me, but my view is that there were very few that actually were kind of SAU-wide. This is the consideration that folks want to make. But so it's all kind of open to interpretation based on that. But sort of my summary of those emails is that 13 of the emails we received just wanted to essentially keep the policy the way we have it presently, as Dean just described. 8 folks of those 26 also said that they want masks required for all, which in our case would be essentially having the high school included in required masks. And then 2 of those folks also said they wanted masks to be optional through all schools, as opposed to current status of BES, EMS, and BES. There were several questions that were posed. Maybe didn't catch them all. One was a discussion about remote learning options, whether a camera in front of the classroom that the kids can at least see the class while they're in quarantine or have COVID, or full-on remote learning like we had last year. There was another question about the spacing that Dean discussed, but mainly spacing at BES, DES, EMS during the lunch and snack times. And finally, there was a kind of a question and comments about, that apparently some schools have actual testing, COVID testing before school starts in different places. And apparently a number of schools have rapid tests available in the nurse's office and are administered on a regular basis. Neither of those that our school is doing presently. So I'm guessing we'll discuss all those tonight at some point here with the administration or something. And then I guess that was really mainly about it. I know we talked as a board, and to the extent we open this up to public comment later, we just asked that those 26 folks not stand up and comment again. It's the same. We already heard those folks' comments. I guess if they have something new they specifically want to ask or something, feel free. But the board's already heard those. We've all agreed we would read every comment. Some of these have attachments. We've looked at the attachments. And so we've taken into consideration everything that was submitted in those emails. I think that's about it. I don't know if anyone else has anything.
So I think what we can do now is open it up to public comment here, and then after we take public comment here, we'll discuss it as board. And just a couple of things I would say. I mean, it's not just, I had said kind of limit comments to 3 minutes if you can. We're just gonna allow people to speak once, say we want to hear your opinions and your thoughts, but if you can get that out one time at the microphone, that would be wonderful. And just be respectful. And make sure when you stand up at the microphone to say your name and address.
Good evening, Bruce Marshall, 12 Sharon Drive. I have a first grader and a third grader. 2 older kids that have gone through all the schools and on to college. My kids, especially my son, cannot just physically wear a mask all day. And so they've been at home with us. And the way the school has treated them is frankly disgusting. They have us pick up some work for them on Monday. Half the time, the material's not all there. We have to chase it down during the week. If you're going to go on with this mask in the classroom so my kids can't go, then you need to do a better job of having some kind of, whether it's remote learning or some kind of adequate substitute. Because what you've been doing just isn't fair to my kids. And I'm sure there's other kids whose parents are going through the same thing. Now, in my work, I represent several daycares in New Hampshire. And through the whole pandemic last year, They separated them out into classrooms and kept the kids separate during the day without any masks. Didn't have any outbreaks. They kept the kids separate. If someone was sick, then that classroom would, get tested or go home. And I appreciate you think you're doing what you need to do, but ignoring kids that are in my children's situation isn't right. And making believe they don't exist and not giving them the class materials they're supposed to have is unacceptable. So whatever you decide tonight, you gotta do something about the kids that can't go to school. Just ignoring them and giving them a packet that's incomplete on every Monday isn't getting it done. It's a disservice to a lot of kids. They have no problem going in and staying in the classroom if they can take the mask off at least part of the time in the classroom. Keep the mask in the hallways. I don't know why you'd be letting them mix out on the playground if you're worried about transmission. Or I'm told by parents, the kids are there, they're sharing stuff in the classroom with each other. So, and you had an outbreak, at least in the 5th grade, where they're wearing masks. So, if you're gonna do something and not let kids like mine get back to school, then give us a remote alternative so that we can address that. Thank you.
Hi, Roxana Scarpino, 36 Chandler Circle, also a nurse. I did not send an email, so that's why it came up, so kind of why I didn't. We'll just say that. So I'm gonna just make this quick, but so far at the middle school, we've had, I think it was 9 positive cases, 1 at another school within the district. There was a level change done to the middle school on the 7th. However, the communication that was sent out about the cases was that it was social transmission. So I'm not sure if that means that it was not school-based transmission. So food for thought for me is if we're making level changes based upon transmission that does not occur in the school, it doesn't really make sense. If you're implementing what you think needs to be implemented at school and you have school-based transmission, by all means make changes in the school environment. But if you don't have school-based transmission, I'm not sure what exactly that results. The other thing is I noticed this year that, and I don't know if it's just the middle school, but they're notifying everybody of positive cases, even if it doesn't affect their grade or classrooms. So if that is the protocol for this year, I'm not sure that it really adds value. I think it does spark controversy in the community and conflict. So I personally feel like it should be a need-to-know basis. We really don't need any more posting on Facebook, personally. With the level changes made on the 7th, with the increased spacing at lunch, which I hear you're proposing to keep permanent, the downstream effect of that level change was that students with a severe reaction to peanuts and nuts were affected. So basically, the school said that because a request was made for parents not to send in peanut and peanut products again because due to spacing for eating, they cannot create a peanut safe space for students with nut allergies. So if you ask me, the safety of students with these types of allergies should be of the utmost concern. I don't think it's fair to put these kids at risk for spacing. There should be another solution for kids with nut allergies. My daughter does not have a nut allergy, but I know her friends do, some of her friends. So I guess how is spacing for cases not tied to school transmission carry more importance than someone who has an anaphylactic reaction to nuts or peanut products? The other thing, last time I talked about flipping back with level changes. So we haven't had a positive case since the 13th. We still haven't made any changes to flip back, but we were able to flip into a more restrictive level over the weekend. So I still think that really needs to be thought about. It really should. If you can flip into a more restricted change in the weekend, you should be able to pull back in a weekend as well. So 17 days now, if you don't count school days, less. And then as far as masks, I still think it should be optional. Kids hang out with each other outside of school and they're not wearing masks. I can tell you none of them at my house are, or in sports. To compare where middle school is mask optional, with the majority of students not wearing masks, I have friends who work in the district. They have a total of 3 COVID cases within their school, and they have no distancing requirements either. Additionally, Bedford Middle School, 3, masks optional, Merrimack, Upper Elementary 4, and their middle school 2. So Bow Middle School has had more COVID than these schools with masks optional. So I'd like to know what the school board has done to do additional research to compare our school, which is masks required, to schools that are masks optional. I believe last time you had mentioned you would look at these cases. Thanks.
Hi, Susan Moltisanti from AD Math. I do recall that last time we met, you said you were going to look at just the Bow and Dunbarton data. Maybe I missed this, could very well have, but I thought that that was like basically your governing principle for determining what you're going to do about the masking. And maybe you could fill me in on that. I'd really appreciate it.
We can discuss it.
We'll discuss that.
Hi, Pam Roberge, 13 Hampshire Hills Drive in Bow. Just in follow-up to that comment that she made, I think it was a very good one, and again, I too could have missed it, but at the last meeting in August, we arrived at a decision to wear masks, and I don't recall having received a survey to determine whether or not there was a concern that my daughter may have had COVID symptoms before starting the school year, or, how was that decision made to determine that masks were necessary when we had really no numbers to support that decision? So moving forward, I think it would be helpful to have a data set to determine numbers to support whether or not masks are necessary.
All right, so I think I'll open it up for. Oh, right, I forgot, I don't have the computer up.
No one has their hand up, but you might want to ask them.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll discuss, I think Dean's proposal is to continue basically as is, and I think we can discuss that. So just do like we did last time, kind of go down the line. Start with Bryce.
I'll be pretty brief, I guess. I would keep the status quo. I have an 8th grader. I personally, I would not require him to wear a mask. I don't think they necessarily need to wear the mask, but I coach youth football. I'm around a lot of 7th and 8th graders. I've never heard a single one complain about wearing the mask, despite being around them all the time. They seem okay with it, and I understand the benefit of it, so I'm fine with the way it's going presently. At the high school, last I looked, I think we've had 1 COVID case, and so I would not expand masking at the high school. It's been, whatever they're doing seems to be working from my perspective.
I just want to thank everyone who came this evening to give us your opinions and your thoughts. I'm going to kind of mimic what Bryce said. It seems like what we're doing at this point is working. I work at a school in Concord where we are being masked, and children are not complaining about it. They're coming in every day, they're getting their work done, And I feel like at this point in time, I'm on the data, the dashboard right now for the state, we seem to have it kind of, things are working the way they are, so I would recommend and encourage us keeping it the way it is right now.
I'll make this quick too. I totally agree. I think our plan is working. I'm thankful that our kids are in school, and I'm strongly in favor of keeping the chip on course the way it is running right now.
I try to be brief, but I do want to share some thoughts. I think things are working, so I think that the current plan is probably the way to go. I don't think there's a need for a change. Realizing that CDC and the AAP still recommends masks for all people in K through 12 schools, including high school, which we're not doing, but it's just a good plan that works for our community. Regarding those under 12, which we're hoping to have vaccines available for before long, probably around Halloween with a little luck. I just want to put out a thought that we have to give people some time. It's going to be a sudden surge of people. They're not all going to get vaccinated that day. So when the time comes, we're going to need to leave not just the 5 weeks, but some time for them to get those appointments made and get in. Realizing that when we look at our numbers of cases we've had locally, which those don't seem to be updated as well as we'd like to on the site, the graph shows a great increase of numbers lately. That's the Delta surge that's come through. Numbers show that exponentially, we've had an exponential increase in cases in children over the summer. So I'm glad that kids are masked because they haven't had a lot of cases yet because we haven't had a lot of exposure yet. The number of cases in the past couple of weeks has been about 500,000 children in the country. It's about 3 times more than we would have seen a couple of months ago. So it's increasing, which is what the graph on the dashboard is showing us. I shared with some of you some data the CDC just released this past week. I thought I'd just share in brief. They did a study, they looked at a little over 1,000 K through 12 schools, and they found 191 school-associated outbreaks. Of those, 59% occurred in schools with no mask requirement, and only 8% occurred in those where masks were required. For everyone, masks don't stop all the outbreaks, but it does seem to have some preventative effects. So data that's worth looking at. I too want to share, I appreciate everyone's point of view. I know that we aren't going to make everybody happy. I think our plan is a fairly good one. I personally, since about the time of our last meeting, shortly after the COVID numbers started picking up, I haven't been in a public place not wearing a mask myself. I'm vaccinated, but the numbers have increased. The Delta variant isn't a great thing to catch if you can help it, even if you're vaccinated. So I'm not just wearing for the meeting, but I've had this on every single public place I've been. So when I go to the grocery store, when I've been anywhere in a public place, even though I'm vaccinated. That's why the recommendation from the CDC is for high school is it's for adults too. The CDC recommends adults who are vaccinated when they're in public places to wear them as well. And then the local cases aren't reported so well just locally in Bow, but looking at the dashboard, the number of cases, as far as new cases in the prior 14 days, when we last met was 229. That's now 700. So locally in our county, because we don't have good numbers for Bow, and it wouldn't help much because by the time they're raising a Bow, it's already in here. You want to have masks on to prevent them. So it was 229, now it's 700. The rate of new cases per 100,000 population was 151, and now it's 462. So 151 to 462 means we are now seeing a Delta surge come through. We're having an increased number of cases. So currently, right now, the masks are all more important than they were a couple of months ago. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Just want to share a little bit of data.
Hi, I'm Jeff Trexler with the Dunbarton SAU Board. I support the superintendent's recommendation to maintain the status quo at this time and to maintain that status quo until such time that our elementary school kids have vaccines available to them and can become fully vaccinated. I think it's critical that we keep these kids in school and that the kids that don't have the opportunity to be vaccinated at this time are vulnerable. Like Eric, I watched the charts on the dashboard at the state website. just about every day. And I've been just as concerned with this uptick that's come in since the late summer, the Delta variant. And it is hitting our kids these days more than the prior COVID, the prior variants. So I think it's important to keep the mask on, and you got to have the mask on before it gets into your building. It doesn't do much good to try to put masks on after the infection gets into the building. So I'm in favor of supporting the status quo and the recommendation of the superintendent.
Yeah, Jared Duncan, Dunbarton School Board. It's good to be sitting here because everyone has said a lot of good points already that I don't have to repeat. For the folks in the audience, I just want to give a little bit of a recap. We didn't say it tonight, but it's been said before. We typically don't respond to emails. We usually don't read them all. We click on the links. We take it very seriously. We can't go back and forth with every email, obviously. Tonight, a lot of you have raised good points. We have administrators from each building in the audience. We have the superintendent here. I'm sure that each one of your concerns will be discussed and hopefully responded to. I don't have an answer for the one in the back on your question about whether we're comparing to other districts or not. I would say, in my opinion, we just stick to our community here and see how it's working and not worry about what other districts are doing. If you read the papers right now, a lot of districts are dealing with very difficult situations, larger communities than us, more urban areas, obviously, and there's a lot more people closer together. So we are fortunate here. But I would support what everyone said so far and keep the policy in place and try to prevent any surge from coming in by keeping the masks on.
I am Nicole Sloan, also from the Dunbarton School Board. I'm really excited with the way this year has started, and we've seen as the schools have been really focused on learning. I'd like to continue to see that happen, and if having the masks on means that the kids can be in school, then I'm fully supportive of that. The CDC and the doctor's recommendation is sort of what I'm going off in my decision.
I'm Madden, Dunbarton School Board. It's going to sound like a broken record, but yes, my focus is to keep the kids in school. I think we've done that admirably. I think the administration and teachers are working hard to deliver a quality school year. As everyone, a few of my colleagues have said before, they want to have a mask on before they get in there. And so I think when those kids have a chance to get vaccinated, we can re-examine that, but we're doing well with the plan that we have, and I'd like to continue to do well. And as Bryce mentioned before, I think the high school's doing the well the way that's going, so I concur.
Jenna, just to answer the lady, I think your name was Susan. She asked a question about last time in August when we talked about just looking at data from Bow and Dunbarton. I think I made the point at that time that it would be great if we could sort of weight the data, apply more weight to what's actually happening in the two towns as opposed to just countywide or statewide. And I think that was the point that was made at that time. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we had a final decision on how we were gonna kind of look at data and assess. I would echo what everyone has said and agree to kind of keep going is I work in healthcare and I've seen a lot of cases lately. And I've seen cases in vaccinated people, so I worry a little bit about our teachers too being a lot more susceptible to getting COVID if the kiddos aren't masked. And not vaccinated people don't get really, really sick typically, but they have to be out. And then how do we run our schools? Again, for me, the focus is really keeping the kids in-person learning. I am going to ask you, Dean, or the administration, maybe to just address a few of the questions that everybody had that I don't have answers to. One being remote instruction. I know we've talked about that we're not doing the synchronous learning, and having full remote classes. But if like a webcam was an option or something so kids could follow along, or what we do about kids who are out or unable to be in school for whatever reason. And then I think you already addressed it a little bit, but the distancing at lunch, I think that's kind of been fixed. But I know some parents had concerns about that, distancing the kids, particularly in the middle school and elementary schools. We did get an email from one of the school nurses, I think, talking about testing, and that it would be really, they wouldn't be able to test right now. They're maxed out with just everything they're dealing with. I know that other districts that are doing it have had grants, so they've hired LNAs specifically to just do that through grant money. So I think I wouldn't expect our nurses to be the ones testing. I think, and maybe we can address the, I guess with the lunch and the spacing, the peanut allergy issue as well. I didn't know, wasn't aware of that. And the other thing I will say that Dean just passed this on and I saw it too, but it does seem like full remote is not going to be an option. So I think we've talked about by the state, not for Bo, yeah. Director of Education and Sununu have both sort of said that that's not going to be allowed as an option. So I think we have to think about how we safely keep these kids in school, because we don't have a choice to flip to remote, even if we have an outbreak. So I think putting in the layers of protection we can to try to keep the kids in school before COVID gets in is really important. I don't know.
Well, one of the areas I'd like the board to weigh in on, because the principle, I think what we're saying is we want that people who, when we get to a point where we have a cohort that is vaccine eligible, they can take their mask off. Well, at this point, you have some classes in 8th grade and 7th grade who we would identify as being vaccine eligible. And that has a little asterisk on it that says the age of vaccination plus the 6 weeks. So one of the things I'd like the board to weigh on and think about is, do we go to that point? And so that we would, because I made the decision to do targeted masking over Labor Day in response to a rise in COVID cases. That was a targeted masking event that I felt. Can we back off that targeted masking now and just say, if we identify a cohort that is vaccine eligible, can they take their masks off of the classroom? And the reason I ask that is 2 things are going to happen as we go through this year. Kids are going to get older, so more and more cohorts, even at this point, are going to become vaccine eligible. And the other thing that's going to happen is, I believe sometime, and the last time I heard about it, maybe the end of December, maybe the end of the year, that this vaccine or vaccines are going to become eligible for younger children. They may become eligible for all of our children. And at that point, is the board saying we want to mask it because it's vaccine eligible, or are you comfortable with this being K in high school?
Dean, can I ask a question? And I know there's some varying degrees of opinion on this question. Do we have a percentage indication of the number of vaccinated students at the high school?
No, I don't have the accurate data.
Okay.
Anything I would tell you would be just.
So for my work, I have to provide a negative test and a vaccine card to go anywhere out of the country and to get back in the country. I have no problem asking for vaccination status, and if you want to take your mask off. But if you just say vaccine eligible, that opens a whole can of worms, because we don't know who's vaccine eligible. And people would argue with me and say, well, that makes no sense because high school has no outbreak right now. True, but maybe 80% aren't vaccinated, we don't know. So when you say vaccine eligible, I'd like to make sure we've got a good chunk of people that are vaccinated before we start lowering the mask mandate.
I think, in my opinion too, because we started the year doing not masking in 7th and 8th grade, and I think it was a lot harder on the administration and just having kids in the school that were mask clubs before, do you mask, do you not mask. I think I would be in favor of at least making it school dependent. So until every single kid in the school also is vaccine eligible, I think then it needs to be masked by school. So K-8, for me, I'm okay with saying. And not
I don't think you'd be surprised to hear that. I don't want to unmasked part of the middle school at this point, right in the middle of the height of our Delta surge. Right? And I think we don't have to always make these decisions at these big meetings either, because most of your zone changes are going to be you making decisions in collaboration with consulting your zone committee, your subcommittee. I don't think right now is the time to do it, but I think as the year goes on, we have more kids getting vaccinated. We see the numbers are going down, which they're bound to over the upcoming couple of months. At some point, that decision might make more sense. I don't think it makes sense to make that decision right now, though, to take off masks in the middle school. You already pointed out that those people who work in the school find it more difficult to have part of the school masked and part of the school unmasked.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with all you guys on that. And what I mean by that is, the way it's played out, like we were talking earlier, like, do we look at bow numbers? Do we look at Dunbarton data? Those sorts of things. It just organically happened, right? That we had an outbreak in the middle school, and he quickly changed to masks for the 7th and 8th graders as well. And my point being, I don't want to take a firm position like you just said, or Jenna said, or anyone else. I want to just let it naturally play out. And if there comes a point and we're like, you know what, there hasn't been a single case in the last 4 months, then yeah, let's get rid of the masks. Like, I don't think we should have a blanket position right now that says, yeah, masks forever. Like, I just don't. I'd rather have it more fluid.
I don't know that I'm really disagreeing with you. I think fluid makes sense. I don't think right now is the time to make the change, is what I was trying to say.
No, you're not disagreeing with me either. I think we're on the same page. I don't want to just change, and make a hard rule today. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. He's monitoring.
Well, didn't we give Dr. C the authority to make those decisions in consultation with his subcommittee? And I think he still has the authority to make those decisions. And if he decides at some point in the future that it might make sense to unmask those cohorts, I think he has the ability. It's not a one-way thing, the way I understand it. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah. So I think, the subcommittee is Jenna, Eric, Dr. Noble, and myself.
Could we get an opinion from somebody off the board? You guys mind? I'd ask Seth, because Seth, you're an 8th grade teacher. Like, I know.
No pressure.
Well, no, I'm just curious because, my belief is like, I'm a vaccine guy. Like, once I got vaccinated, I'm not like Eric. I don't wear a mask in Target and stuff. Once I got vaccinated, I did all the time before that. And so you've got an enormous number of kids in your class. Is their attitude different than 5th graders, basically, because they're all like, hey, we're vaccinated, this is stupid? Or are they like just going along like, hey, a mask is a mask? I'm not. What's your general feeling on that?
So in my class, and I've kind of.
Yes, can you get to a week?
You want me to come down?
Yes.
Seth Finger, not working. Seth, why are we here? Seth Fingery.
Jeff?
Seth Fingery, 36 Pinnacle Lane, BMS Social Studies teacher. So in my class, I've been sort of informally kind of keeping an eye on it. I'd say about 75% of the kids wear their mask correctly all the time. About 25% of the kids chronically have it down around their mouth. And then all you do is do this and they pop it back up. It's pretty much the same 25% every single day, every single period, but that's kind of the general trend. But they wear the mask when you remind them. So they're complying for the most part. And it's not a big deal. They don't argue about it. They don't give you a hard time. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, you can put it back up. So I don't know if that answers the question. Great, thanks.
There you go. Just to add one more point, when we don't wear it in Target, it decreases it increases our risk of maybe picking it up. We'll have a mild illness. In the classroom setting, where children are surrounded by others who may be not vaccinated, maybe they can't be vaccinated for one reason or another, age or otherwise. But we wear the mask to prevent the kids from spreading it to their neighbors, not just to prevent them from getting it. If you don't wear it at Target, presumably you're not wearing it because you don't mind if you catch it, because you'll get a mild illness with good luck. But we're asking the kids to wear it so they don't spread it to the teacher and to others, because, and truly, actually, they're not, they can spread it to their teacher or others. So the risk primarily will be someone spreading it to someone who's not vaccinated or who's at high risk. And the masks do help prevent us from catching it to some extent, but they're much better at helping us not to spread it out to others. So that'd be
So, one of the questions that was asked out here today is when do you back off the regulation? I mean, over Labor Day, we had an outbreak, you know, talked to the committee and we increased it. And I believe as it goes through fall and winter, that may happen at the high school. In fact, you know, my business administrator is very much tied into Co-Brown, and they're fighting some outbreaks and some clusters at Co-Brown, and they have to go targeted masking. Well, when do you back off that? When do you back off and say, okay, we can remove the mask? I think that's a question that people are asking. So I asked the question, I'll answer it. What the heck? What I'm hearing tonight is we'd like to stay with the change later Labor Day and have K masks in high school not. When would we begin thinking about removing masks? Do we have to wait until the vaccine eligibility is lowered? Or do we have to wait until there was a less than substantial level in the community? Would either of those be markers, or I should then say to the committee, can we remove masks? Because I think that's the question people are asking. Is this going to be all year long? Is this permanent? Or if this thing gets better, when can we consider taking the masks off in care? Just like some, I mean, you can say make the decision, okay, thank you. But what are your thoughts about when that happens?
Well, you're talking about two different things, aren't you? Like, one is the targeted masking strategy that you made at BMS, right? And then another is just the SAU-wide. Is that because you're talking about how Co-Brown has these clusters that are breaking out, they have targeted masking just like you did over Labor Day, which was appropriate. And but you're talking about when can we just lift the entire masking requirement? Because I think there's two parts to that question. And what is there any guidance on if you have a cluster, when you can take that out? Is it 2 weeks after the last positive case or what?
Okay, so if we have an outbreak or a cluster at the high school and we say we're masking in the high school, when the cluster resolves, then we can say, okay, we don't have to have targeted masking. And at the middle school, I made a decision to go to targeted masking over Labor Day, but it seems tonight we're making a decision that the whole school is going to be masked. Okay. So when can we consider relaxing the masking rules for K?
I think you said it, when the 5th and 6th graders become vaccine eligible, right? Then you've got the four classes that are in the same building, all eligible. And then, you know, back to Eric's data, I think he's spot on. We're in the spike right now, and we've been lucky and controlled in Bow, and maybe in October and November, we see that go down. I for one, do not see this masking all year unless we have a new variant. I would hope we can start relaxing the standards relatively soon. And Eric has the data, I read it today. Everyone's thinking November is going to be a really good time for things to start quieting down because of the eligibility, and the spike is going to be through. So we could see something before Christmas.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to see the kids eligible for vaccination. Again, currently, Halloween-ish is around when it's thought maybe the FDA will be able to approve that. Pfizer has, I believe, already submitted the information to them for review. I'd like to see the Merrimack County level not be substantial. It's substantial in every county in New Hampshire currently. So we're in the middle of a surge. Right now is not the time to do that. I think we can get Dr. Noble's input too when the time comes to start making those changes. I think that within the next short number of months, things will be a lot different. The Delta variant surge will be behind us. The kids in every school, because it should be 5 through 12, which should be vaccine eligible before long. So it shouldn't be too long before we can have them vaccine eligible, and at the same time, no longer have the substantial level. And I think you're reaching out at that point to the your advisory subcommittee and having these discussions on an ongoing basis. And I don't think it'll be long, but I don't think I'll make the changes right now.
So I would agree, and I think going forward, to give you some guidance, Dean, then when, I guess what we're saying as a board, it sounds like, is when everybody's vaccine eligible or school, and when, or, I guess, we look at community numbers, when the numbers start to go down.
But I think you have to say, there is a marker that we're gonna look at.
There is a marker.
Say we're gonna back up.
Yes, I think,
Back up, because I think the point is made, it's easy to go more restrictive. It seems it's much harder to get to less restrictive.
well, I think it's been harder to get less restrictive right now too, because since we met last, we are now in the midst of the Delta surge in New Hampshire. So I think that's part of why I think the hesitation to pull back is happening, and that's numbers in the community. So I think, yes, looking at both numbers in the community and vaccine eligibility, I think we all have a goal to not have masks all year if we don't have to. If the kids can be in school safely and stay in school without masks on, without high risk of outbreak, which is subjective, and I don't think, it's a hard question to ask of all of us, I think, to try to predict, but.
So a possible motion would be, if you get to that point, is that you move to, for the open plan to maintain the level that we are now, that was implemented at Labor Day, until eligibility for the vaccine changes, or the level of COVID in Merrimack County becomes less than substantial.
I mean, that handle.
Well, you can make that if you want,
Yeah.
but I'd like some sort of, you know, this isn't just gonna go on forever.
Yes, I would.
And if we did that, and then there are three, there's the craft fair, remote learning, and COVID testing. And I would say if you're making that motion, we could get to the point at the high school where we would do some targeted masking. We would do that until a cluster outbreak is under control, and then masking will be taken away. I'm looking at you, Brian, because you're probably have to implement it.
Yeah, I think that's what you would have to do.
But, you know, you're looking at places like the soccer team has a cluster or something like that. You know, what do? You mask the whole school? Do you mask?
I mean, I think it really truly depends on where the positive cases are. And when, I know we don't do specifically contact tracing anymore, but when you start taking those steps backwards of like where the points of contact, right? Like we have positive cases that came up, you know, and we're starting to take those backward steps. And we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to notify the appropriate people, and it's not going to be this huge outbreak or anything along those lines. But we just honestly don't know until a couple of days pass and we see how that just plays out for some way, you know. We feel confident in what we're doing, you know, at the high school, and you know, a month in, I think our data supports that whatever we're doing, it's dumb luck or something else, something's working, you know, like we don't have cases, like, and so we just gotta take it like day by day, literally case by case as they kind of pop up, you know. But I think we gotta be responsive if we have a scenario, and let's use the soccer team scenario, where all of a sudden we have 3 kids, and I think we can make that link and say like, hey, you know, we've got at a minimum cluster, you know, mass soccer kids, and then that might be, because the soccer team has kids from 4 grades on it, across a ton of different classes, that might expand out to more and more kids in classes. You know, that I think at the high school, we're pretty normal when you talk about like how we're going through normal days. Like we're going through normal classes, we're doing normal lunches, we're doing a lot of normal stuff, which I think is really good for the kids. The slippery slope of that though is like, we haven't experienced this in the year plus that we've been doing this at the high school, is that what happens if we can't cope, if we don't cope. We've been honest about that the whole time. We haven't had a problem yet, but like, what happens when we do? We'll just have to deal with it when it happens.
we want to discuss when we finish this.
Yeah.
Want to be emotional?
No, we'll finish the discussion.
So the COVID testing at school, that's come up, and I think, the ask was, can you have rapid tests at school to give to kids, or rapid tests at school to give to adults? And our nurses are pretty much unanimously, not in favor of doing that. I think Tracy probably, you saw that. Tracy kind of rolled that out the best. The craft fair, huge event in Vogue, asked to use the building. My thought was is that we would allow the craft fair to come in and use the building. And we would ask that they require masks at the craft fair. My thought there is because you're gonna have a mix of ages of kids. I mean, we're not gonna just adults. I've been to the craft fair and there's a whole mix of ages of kids. And I think they were okay with requiring the mask. So we would say, yep, you can have a large event like that, but we would ask that you require a mask for part of it. And that would go for any large event that we have, where we have mixed ages. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get some principles to work on.
Yes,
Yes. And that event also is not during school hours, so that would make sense too.
Okay.
Why not just limit it to under 12? Why not just mask under 12? Like 90% of that event's gotta be over 12 years old.
Remember I mean, if what you're trying to do is prevent the under 12 from catching it, then the way to do that is to prevent people who are older, who are carrying it in their respiratory system from breathing out onto 12-year-olds. The masks that the 12-year-olds are wearing aren't that protective. It's that they are spreading it. You need everybody in the room to wear it so that she doesn't spread it to you, not so that your mask is keeping you from catching the germs. Because especially the masks the kids are wearing, they're loose fitting. I've got a tight fitting mask on, but a loose fitting cloth one lets the air go inside. But when I breathe out, if I have a cloth mask on, it stops it from spreading at a distance.
But, so we're gonna require the craft fair wear masks, but high school kids not? Like, that seems very inconsistent.
I'm talking to under 12-year-olds in the high school.
True.
That's the reason. Otherwise, the high school students who have vaccines and feel protected would be breathing onto the unprotected under 12-year-olds. So if you're going to have under 12-year-olds in the room, and maybe you don't have them, maybe you say it's an adult-only craft fair, but if you have young kids there, that might make sense to have a similar system.
Is there somebody here from the craft fair? Do you care? I mean, Angela, you fine with them wearing masks?
We can put it out to them and the crafters and the people coming can make a decision on what they want to do.
No, I mean, if you don't care, then why are you talking about it up here? Like, okay.
I mean, I don't want you to see that. I
Do you want- So-
Can I get a request from the BAC this
Right, to have a tournament.
The answer is, yeah, you can run the tournament, but if it's mixed ages between adults and kids, because we require our kids under 12 to be masked, we would ask that you be masked.
Yeah, now, on the other hand, under 12-year-olds aren't required to attend the craft fair. So you can also just put out there, it's mask optional, and people would understand and not bring their kids if they didn't want to. Because the classroom, the kids have to be there. You're subjecting them to people who are masked or not masked. But I mean, I don't feel strongly about this with the craft fair. If you said masks are optional, people walking the door would understand that and not bring their kids in if they weren't protected, presumably. I don't know that we have to mandate them.
I honestly feel like as a school board, our job is to keep the kids safe for in-school learning. I don't feel like events outside of school hours are our jurisdiction to say you have to wear a mask or you don't have to wear a mask. We're not parents can decide what they want to do with their kid at the craft fair. If they're not wearing the shorts, I feel like it's our job to keep the kids in-person learning safely. I don't have a preference about school events that are outside of school hours.
My only question is, Jen, I agree 100%. At the craft fair, to me, if whatever they want to do, it's like going to Target, Bryce wears it, Eric does, you don't, whatever. Is there something in your operating plan that deals with high school building off hours? Is that what we're going to be conflicting with? Is that why you're asking us? Otherwise, this is,
I'm just trying to make some decisions and trying to make them on principle and not just willy-nilly. So, and I think what I'm trying to get at is where our district has come down, is we've come down to this idea of being vaccine culture. that's the principle that we're making our decisions on. So I'm trying to make those, so yeah, I'll work with the craft fair about what they want to do, but I'm just trying to make, so I'm just not making random decisions, it's like I'm trying to find what the principle is we're really thinking about. That's all.
The only thing with the craft fair that's interesting to me is if you spread it out, I know there's always like 17,000 people in the one hallway right here, which is good for business. But, you know, in these times, but yeah, mass optional, you know, that's fine, people know.
It'll be up to them. We will see what our policy is.
Yeah, I think Jenna actually really said it well. Our job is to educate the kids in the schools and things that are tied to the kids with problems. I guess makes sense to me, but leave it up to them. People don't have to come.
That's my job.
Good. All right, remote instruction, remote learning. There's some interesting policy going on at this point. I think I covered it in my written area. The one thing that teachers said to me coming into this year is the integrated model that we had last year, where we were dealing with both remote and in-person students, was just very, very difficult to manage as a teacher. So what I have asked repeatedly, I've asked my administrators and pushed down into the teachers, is that the Google Classrooms and the Seesaw needs to be up to date, loaded on, and have materials so that kids can keep up the best they can when they are not in school. The emphasis this year has been on in-person, in-school learning, and there are reasons to keep that emphasis very strong on that, because I think that's what is the best instructional model. I've talked to a number of teachers. It is very difficult when you are running a class to run both remote and in person. And even just turning on the camera in the front of the room and having kids listen, there are two issues with that. One, it's incredibly boring and kids are not very engaged with that at all, because you're not, and the way to make it more engaged is to put more time and effort into the remote part of the class, but then it takes away from your in-person. So, but that really, I've been pushing for the Google Meets and the Seesaws, and let's try to make sure that these kids keep in person, and some of it is more successful than others.
But, sorry, I keep talking all the time. But isn't it up to the kid if he thinks it's boring? Like, why can't we just put a camera in the front of the room, and if the kid chimes in, if the kid wants to watch, the kid can watch, but shouldn't they have the option to just sit there? I mean, we understand that's not remotely as good as being in class, but some of those kids can't be in class.
And
why can't they just watch?
Yeah, I'd second that. There are gonna be some children who are willing to watch, if it's possible, if it's not too onerous on the teachers just to have the camera there. Bryce has brought it up a number of times. I think it's a good idea. And for those who won't sit there and watch, sometimes there's a parent or guardian who will assist them in paying attention, but it seems so much easier to fall behind when you can't hear the teacher speaking. Probably all the more so in the higher end, the high school classes, when there's a lecture going on, if you can't hear it, you can just see some Google material. I don't know if it's sufficient. I would love a camera that's non-interactive, and I guess maybe even getting teachers' feedback about whether that would be, if there's a problem with doing so. I agree, it'd be helpful.
And I think this would help the gentleman in red, Mr. Marshall's point earlier. Do we have capability still to have a camera in all the classrooms, I assume? Dean?
Not the cameras we had, those are set up.
Okay.
I mean, you want to turn a laptop on in class and have an audio of the class would probably be
Easier.
I'm not sure how much video you can get in the class. Well, what motion would you make? Is the motion that you make is to direct every teacher in the SAU to have a live audio and video stream of their class?
I would think if every teacher had the capability, and then every classroom that had a child out of school, and not for a one-day illness, but out of school because they're quarantined or for a prolonged period of time, and maybe not related to COVID. I mean, if their children are out of school for other health reasons for 2 weeks, it would be helpful to them as well. So I don't think it has to be turned on if there's no one having a prolonged absence. And so most classes probably don't have prolonged absences regularly, but I think those.
So what, again, my question is, what do you actually propose?
Well, here's my fear, is what happened last year in Dunbarton. Every parent became an essential worker overnight, and they dropped their kid off every day. So every teacher had almost a full classroom, even though, you know, not everyone was an essential worker. The definition was so ambiguous, though. What are you gonna do? If we start putting cameras in rooms, is every kid gonna stay home? And it's gonna go right back to where we were, which is what we don't want, is what I'm assuming. But if there's a couple isolated children that can't come to school for, you know, health reasons or physical disabilities or whatever have you, and it's easy to put a camera in that classroom, do we do, you know, one-time supplemental plan? I don't know. You know, this is getting into a very dicey situation because we're going to go back to the remote pieces that we're trying to avoid.
I don't know, I guess I don't see it that way. I mean, Jen could turn her computer around right now. There's a camera on the front. Somebody puts it in the front of the classroom and the day goes on. Like, I don't understand what's hard about that.
Nothing's hard. It's just once we do it once, it becomes a policy. That's all.
What is the expectation? If the expectation is I'm going to turn the camera on, I'm going to put it in my class, I'm going to teach it, and I'm never going to interact with that student who's on the other side of the camera. I'm not going to answer any emails during class of that student who's on the camera. That's a different expectation than we're going to engage the student in a remote situation, answer emails from the parent, from that camera, answer questions from that camera. And if you're not going to do that, then what's the just having the camera? And again, I have no skin in the game. I sit in my office, I don't teach kids. What I'm reflecting to you is what teachers have told me how difficult it is to run the remote and the live in person, and that just turning on the camera doesn't really get you where you want to go.
I think there's a disconnect here. I think we're all saying what you said first, which is turn the camera on, let it roll, no interaction. The kid can chime in or watch if they want. They can't interact. Maybe at the end of the day, they reach out and say, hey, I watched this lecture, but none of us are saying remote learning. I mean, we're all saying exactly what you said. I don't think there's any work other than clicking it on the computer when it sits in the front of the classroom.
At any point, can that be recorded though? Because that would be an issue. There is a state law regarding not being able to record class activities like that. So if at any point that could be recorded, that would be an issue for us. So that would be something we have to make sure. By either us or the parents.
The broadcast will be recordable. If you broadcast it to my screen, I can record that screen.
We could run it last year.
I don't know if they lifted it because of COVID, but I'm not sure there was, yes. There is a state law.
Is that only when there are children on the screen, or just you can't broadcast a class?
It's to protect the teachers and the students, because then a parent could use that as a way to go back against a teacher and their teaching methods. So there are two different, it's to protect two different ways.
If that's the case, then we can't broadcast.
Just do audio.
Can we broadcast audio?
I think it's getting even more.
Is there any added value to audio or just a video stream? I mean, what's the goal is to teach the kids. So if there's not an added value to doing all of it, I'm not, I don't know if there is. I'm asking, is there an added value to just having a video stream?
Well, I think the first gentleman that got up there and spoke about his two kids at home, I think it might be an added value to his kids if they could at least listen to what's going on in the class to augment perhaps the work materials that they have in front of them. So I can see where that could have an advantage for those kids.
So again, what would be your motion? Is the motion like for any classroom where a child is having COVID-related issues, there must be the ability for the child to listen to the class, or to have, a camera turned on, have an audio or video feed of the class? How can I implement what you're asking? And because I would have to direct people to do it. Or I would have to make some sort of rule or law or policy that says, this is what we're doing.
Okay, if there is a legal issue, can we at least figure out what that would be before we decide whether we're going to enact it or not? Because if that's a problem, we can't direct you until we know whether or not we're going to be in violation of the law.
Yeah, so I think we need that data. I think it'd be helpful to have input from the teachers and maybe the principals to let us know how many kids are out, how many classrooms out of effect, what the teachers feel would be beneficial, and then immediately what you already started with is we need rich, data-filled Google classrooms or whatever it takes to actually get good lessons out to the kids who aren't there, so they're not picking up packets, so that they can actually participate in some meaningful learning at home. So, immediately we should be working on that. Well, I think get more data. If the law says we can't do it, we don't even need to discuss it.
Well, I mean, you folks in the school community, you must know the answer, right? I mean, this isn't a unique to every school must have this. Is no schools doing any sort of what we're describing?
Little to none. It's all Google Classroom, at least with the district I work for. We're not doing a dual platform cameras in the classrooms anymore. It's a Google Classroom, Seesaw. Children are if they're out for the 10-period day because of not getting the COVID test, they're keeping up either through their packets or doing it through their Google Classroom assignments.
Yeah, from the sounds of it, we'll be on WMUR tomorrow if we go remote learning here, so we may not want to make any decisions tonight, find some more data. The state law that's being proposed to eliminate this.
No, that's not what the state law is being proposed. The state law is saying we can't go.
It's a full remote.
We have a
Dr. C?
Okay, so we could have an option.
You can have, I mean, just like now, there's nothing preventing a teacher from having a classroom and broadcasting the Google Meet or so forth. I don't
Can you
think
tap in
so.
your
Rob,
microphone?
am I wrong?
You tap in your
We need
microphone.
to have you on the mic.
Sorry. Thank you, sorry. There's nothing preventing a teacher from running a classroom like that right now, as far as I know. I mean, a teacher could set up a Google Meet and do things remotely and do things at home. The question of, are you going to tell teachers they have to do that? And if so, what does that structure look like? I don't think any preventing, like, am I wrong, Roy? Can a teacher set up a Google Meet classroom and do a remote instruction now? Is there an issue with that happening?
Well, that all comes down to expectations, right? Because, I mean, the quality of the presentation is going to be an issue. And there is, as previously mentioned, there was previously some state legislation preventing the recording of what happens in the classroom. The intent of that legislation is not to prevent what we're trying to do tonight, but it is legally an issue.
So if it's legal,
I just wanted to ask Bryce, is this all classrooms across the whole SAU, or is it case specific, like for a child who cannot come into school?
Well, before these legal issues and stuff, yeah, I guess I really dumbed it down. I guess I just pictured it, like I said, teacher turns on the computer in the front of the classroom and starts teaching and pays no attention to it whatsoever. And that didn't strike me as much work. So I guess I thought, yeah, everyone would do that. But you're right, there's no need. And if all your kids are there in school anyway, there's no need. You could do it isolated, but it sounds like we can't do any of it from what I'm hearing.
so should we, for the moment, work on increasing the quality of our homework or lessons for the kids who are not able to come to the classroom? And it sounds like with this legal issue, we can't broadcast, but it sounds like we might need to do something to increase the quality of our home kids' education.
And principal would like to address the board?
Lori, go ahead.
Can you go to microphone? Thank you.
Hi, Lori Kruger, Principal of Elementary. I'm going to run a few scenarios to think about when we go through, because there's remote education and there's when children are out for a short period of time. And so for the short period of time at the elementary level, which I can only speak to, we do have the seesaw slides up and work that can be picked up. And the short periods of time can range anywhere from 10 to 20 days from the moment of infection or exposure. And so that tends to be less than 20 days of school. And depending upon how the household's doing and the level of illness, some people have been able to do that and some people haven't. Perfectly reasonable. Remote education, if we're gonna do it well, and so I agree with Mr. Marshall, that's when you can be fully engaged. Turning on just the camera or the audio in an elementary classroom would not provide that. And when we did it integrated, it did take a lot, and we weren't always able to teach in the same way we were able to when we were either fully in or fully out. The vast majority of the elementary teachers I know would rather teach all in or all remote, so that you can truly meet the needs of the students. Integrated is not the best model for elementary education. And so I think of you as parents, think of your 5-year-olds. That is a harder model. When we could be all in or all out. So if we were to do something that would be remote, I really think we have to think about if we're gonna make that an option for students who can't come in for extended periods past the quarantine time, I think that's where we would kind of need to think. It really is that hard, and I understand where the confusion was with Bryce, because we used to not be able to turn on the camera. In my experience treating chronically ill children, that was always a challenge when they couldn't come to school. However, now there could be other ways, but you do have that privacy for the children as well as the adults in the room. But I do want to really be clear, it's for both, and that act was by executive order last year put on hold so that we could, during the height of the pandemic, or at that point of the pandemic, address education. So just some thoughts.
Shouldn't we just cut off this conversation?
Yeah.
It sounds like we can't do audio
Yeah.
and we can't do computers, so there's no point in talking about it further.
Okay. I think it's done. Move on. All right, yeah.
You probably should take some sort of vote.
Yep, all right.
Unless you'd like me to do something else. Okay.
I don't think so. I think we're good. Okay, so I guess we'll make a motion I will make a motion to adopt the policy, the opening policy, as suggested by Dr. Cascadden. Basically keeping it as it is currently. And we will review the policy based on COVID numbers in the community, Merrimack County, and vaccine eligibility, based on vaccine eligibility, or. Does that sound okay?
I don't know, I don't think if you have one of those go, if the kids are,
Well, if there's no cases in New Hampshire anymore, and we don't still don't have a vaccine, we probably don't need masks.
it's for, it's not a hard stop.
Yeah.
Change.
It's just the trigger to be able to discuss.
Yep,
I hope it can be discussed in, it should be discussed.
and add to the motion that we will feel okay with allowing large group activities at the school? Or is that, we don't need to go to that, okay, all right, we're saying no to that one, okay. So, all in favor?
Well, second. You have to have a second.
Oh, wait, yeah, second,
So
okay,
let me read back,
Yeah,
see
do
if
that.
I captured you. The opening plan is proposed by Dr. Cascadden, keeping elements currently in place since Labor Day. Just to make that clear. A review with max eligibility, was it and or which did you want in there?
I would say or.
Or levels of community transmission fall below substantial.
Triggers what? That's when we're gonna.
A discussion.
Discussion.
Right.
Yes.
You'll review when the max eligibility changes or levels of community transmission fall below substantial. That's what I thought was your essence, and it's an or.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have five things.
Yeah, do we also need to, should we give you permission? You don't need permission to do it, and then motion to do targeted masking.
I
You
believe
can
that's
do that.
appropriate already.
Okay, yeah, I think it is. Okay. So a second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Do we have anything else?
I do think it would be important to ask the nurses and the staff at the middle school if we can relook at the distance and also the allergies, if that is all possible, to try to not have one supersede the other, but it should be that all children are safely, both distance and also allergies are taken into consideration if that's not all possible, if that's something we can reevaluate. Thank you.
Okay. Any other issues?
Motion adjourned?
I just want to take a quick moment to thank all of you guys, Dean, and all the administration, because I know it's been a tough beginning to the year for a lot of reasons, so I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Right? Why wait? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.